In this evaluation exercise, it's Black's turn to move. Who do you think has a better position here? Pause the video to think about it. Okay, here we have a very interesting situation because in some way it's quite difficult to evaluate. Yes, White has an extra knight in material, which is a significant material advantage, but he also has a big problem with his king safety. Now in positions like these, evaluation alone is not enough. You need to calculate a little deeper to see who actually has an advantage. And some positions are so difficult to calculate that you even just have to admit the situation is unclear. Yet, in an unclear situation, it's usually better to be the attacker. Not only because it's more fun to attack, but also because it's harder for the defender to keep on finding good defensive moves. Okay, so I'm going to suggest two moves here and ask which one you think is better. Rook to e8, check, bringing another piece into attack and keeping the king under pressure. Or rook takes b2. Which one of these moves do you think is better? Pause the video to think about it. Okay, now before we look at the moves, there's an important principle in positions like these. When your opponent's king is exposed, you want to put him under as much pressure as possible for as long as possible. You don't want to give him any breathing chances that gives him an opportunity to organize some defenses. And that's why the move rook takes b2 is probably not the best here. Because you give White a little bit of a breather, and after queen takes, he manages to get the queen into the defense as well. And yes, White is still in trouble. He still has to find ways to defend his king, but he's managed to bring another defender into attack, and it's not clear how White is going to continue his attack now. For example, if he checks now, then maybe the king can come back to d1, and it's difficult to see how Black is going to continue his attack now. So let's just go back. And in this position, I'd say this move is better because it keeps your opponent king under pressure. Let's say, for example, the king plays back to d8 to d1. Now we can take this pawn and threaten queen to e2 check. You see, we keep the pressure on. So, for example, if he plays queen there now, we can play check. The king comes out. We can play check. And Black's position is definitely a lot more pleasant to play. There's even some interesting checkmates here. For example, if the king goes back to b1, then check, sacrifice the queen, and that is checkmate. Okay, so that's why the move rook to e8 check would have been better. It keeps the opponent under pressure. Let me just mention one last thing in this position. One thing you'll notice here is Black is attacking with three large pieces, the queen and two rooks. And White is defending with only a queen and a knight, really, because this rook doesn't do much to defend, and this rook does nothing at all to help in the defense. So that's another interesting point that you should understand about king safety. When you can attack an exposed king, then the material you're attacking it with becomes worth more, because the other pieces of your opponent, they become like spectators. You see, in all of these checks that we keep the king under pressure, this rook pretty much just stayed a spectator in the whole process. Okay, so that's enough for this exercise. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, in this position, it's White's turn to move. Who do you think has a better position here? Pause the video to think about it. Okay, so it would seem that in this position, maybe it's relatively equal if you think about the fact that White is a pawn behind in material, but he has compensation in the sense that his pieces are much better developed and that he's already castled and Black hasn't castled yet. Okay, so in this position, I'm going to suggest the move bishop takes b6 or rook f to e1. Which move do you think is better? Compare the two moves. You can pause the video to do that. Okay, let's start with this move, which is quite sad, because after pawn takes bishop, if you think in terms of evaluation, you lost a little bit of material because the bishop was worth more than a knight. And not only that, your bishop was pretty strong here on c7, whereas this knight was very weak on b6. He couldn't come to a4, he couldn't come to c4, he couldn't come to d4, else you win a pawn. So this knight was a really weak piece, and the bishop is a strong piece. So by exchanging it, you're exchanging a very strong piece for a weak piece, and at the same time you're helping black develop his rook quickly along the a file. Yes, you can say that you managed to weaken black's pawn structure, but that does not count for as much as for the fact that you just gave up a good piece for a bad piece, and you're helping your opponent to develop. Okay, compare that with the straightforward move rook to e1, which develops a piece and improves white's position and doesn't help black to get anything. Okay, just a last comment. I want to remind you that all of these games come from real games. I've taken them all from real games that I've seen other people play, and in many cases the players made the incorrect move, and when I show these move comparisons, I'm actually showing a better move. So what I'm saying is this was an actual move played by a player in a game, and I want to use this example to illustrate why the move rook to e1 is actually better. Okay, so that's the end of today's exercises, and then I'll see you again tomorrow. Cheers.